He's our regular here with the Centric Health sponsored segment. That would be Dr. Bridge Bomby. Dr. Bomby, of course, is one of our leading cardiologists in town. He's one of the physician owners of Bakersfield Heart Hospital that was in the news a little bit the other day. Dr. Bomby, welcome back, my friend. How are you?
I'm well, Richard. How are you?
Good, man. I can hear you. You're good, nice and loud today. Hey, we have to start off before we go to the coronavirus. There was a little dust up earlier this week in which this follows the city council voting unanimously against an idea to use 20 rooms in a hotel next to your hospital called the Rosedale Inn. And it's a hotel that caters to transients. It's been a trouble spot. As a matter of fact, right after the vote, the DEA was there. There was a shooting there. It's a troubled hotel. But the Kern Homeless Collaborative wanted to use it to place homeless people under a federal program. The Heart Hospital, and you specifically, had opposed it, citing you guys have had a long history of problems in that area because, of course, you back up to the river there where a lot of the homeless live. The city council agreed with you, and after that, the LA Times parachuted into town. Basically what I thought was a very sanctimonious tone piece, taking not only you by name but Bakersfield as a community to task, basically, in my words, calling us a bunch of hayseeds, and here was this great opportunity to do something for people, and we turned our nose down on it. What did you make of that, Dr. Bomby?
Richard, I have given this issue some reflection. I believe the collaborative has a higher calling. The mission is noble. Their intentions, I believe, are clean. When they opted, and they also are struggling with the legacy issues that nobody wants homeless on their backyard. Mm-hmm. And they have been sensitized by that. But what I found is they're sensitized, but they also narrative has shrunk. They don't see beyond that narrative. When nobody wants homelessness, it's a scourge. In our part of the world, we being the richest country in the world, in the history of the world, why should we have homelessness? We should have centralized, coordinated approach that attacks this problem, both from happening and treating as it has happened. The sense of proportionality is important. There are 1,600 in our part of the world. In Kern County, there are 1,600 homeless. This room key operation was for 20. So 20 out of 1,600, what happens to the other 1,580, even if it was an impeccable spot? Mm-hmm. That's a lotto mentality. You don't distribute lotto tickets and, hey, 20 out of 1,600 are somehow will be housed. Other 1,580 will think next year. What is that supposed to mean? There has to be a larger, more comprehensive approach. But I'm not a social scientist. I'm in government. I don't have the knowledge or the power to deal with that. All that happened, Richard, in our part of the world was we belatedly and accidentally recognized that they were going to park 20 people in this motel. And we felt that's a dangerous move on multiple counts. We have been exposed to violence and vandalism on a regular basis. We have been in touch with the BPD on a regular basis, who have been very kind and cooperative and responsive. But the circumstances have not changed. And all our employees were up in arms, and there was threat they were going to quit jobs. How are we going to service the Heart Hospital and medical offices on this premise if our employees are under constant threat, if our patients are under constant threat? And the threat was based on the demonstrated violence that emanates from that source. There are series of videos, a lot of documented instances of firing, of the firearms being discharged, violence being carried out there. and being being exported to our parking lot and to the hospital. So we were very concerned about it. But more importantly, the mission of the collaborative is to save the people who are in harm's way and park them in a better place, a term called shelter. But one of the first prerequisites of the shelter has to be safety. If you're taking vulnerable, exposed people and sheltering them in more violence, that's not sheltering. That's counterproductive. And all we did for the collaborative was we told them, guys, our due diligence, our presence here suggests that your intentions are good, but these deeds will misfire. These homeless people will be caught in the crossfire. There'll be collateral damage. That's not an appropriate solution for a very difficult problem. That narrative didn't fit their narrative because for them it's always the same thing. These people, these businesses, these wealthy neighborhoods are out there to out the homeless.
Right.
That may be so everywhere else. It wasn't here. It wasn't here, and that's all we wanted to make it clear to them. That's why the city council listened to our argument and unanimously opted for the same reason that I'm recounting here. For the same reason, they voted 7-0. And then this sense that somehow you can make it a sob story and take it across the hill and make it look, to borrow your word, sanctimonious, I thought that was repulsive. And then to put all of us together and call us low to begin with, and we made it lower low, and that is just inappropriate. There is no reason to bring contention and acrimony in a noble cause. I think it was a fiasco that should have been avoided, but I'm ready to move on. This isn't what we do.
Yeah, I understand that. Final question on that. Did the columnist for the LA Times reach out and try to talk to you about this?
That was another part because, there are always three sides to story, his, hers, and the real one. They only publish hers. Nobody reached out. Nobody asked us a question. I think that was a very unbalanced and biased piece.
Right. Well, it certainly relied on some of the old stereotypes of Bakersfield, which have been around for generations, literally. Up the road here, the hayseeds, kind of the hillbillies who don't know what we're doing. It played into all of those. I was kind of surprised by it, but as you said, time to move on. You don't want to get hung up on that. But thank you for spending time on that, and I appreciate it, sir. Let's go to COVID. There was something in the news today I was hoping that you could help explain to me about, as we wait on these trials for a vaccine, that there was a piece somewhere I read yesterday on posing the question, will the vaccines be off or not if the virus has mutated? Can you explain how viruses mutate, and can that happen? Can you be working on a vaccine for one type of virus that mutes into something else that doesn't respond to the vaccine? This
COVID-19 virus, fortunately, is a much more stable genome because of the size of the genome. It's a bulkier virus compared to the influenza virus. It's able to control. It has a proofreading mechanism in it, so it's able to self-replicate almost to the same level all the time. But there are trillions upon trillions upon trillions of copies of virus being replicated. So there will be some variations. So far, the variation or the mutation has been very minimal. That hasn't changed the structure of the virus. So in other words, if a vaccine is made, it's more than likely going to be successful to to provide the immunity against the infection. The Flu virus, on the other hand, has a smaller genome, doesn't have the proofreading mechanism, and thus is a lot more erratic in self-replication. So every year we have a newer version. We call that antigen drift. So drift requires a newer vaccine, but even with so there's a mutation, there's a drift. The drift requires a new vaccine every year, but there is still crossover immunity from previous infections. What we really what we really worry about it is called antigen shift. When the antigen shifts, like the 2018, 2019 influenza, then you're dealing with a novel virus. So mutation doesn't create a novel virus. Mutation doesn't cause drift that's big enough to defeat the vaccine that's being made. So I remain optimistic that we're going to have an effective virus. The only part that's going to be in question is durability and the safety.
Oh, that's interesting. So I want to make sure I'm correct. So when we deal with the flu virus every year and we get a new shot every year, is that because of antigen drift or shift?
Drift. The shift is more severe. Shift would change the virus. It'll become a novel virus.
Okay. All right. So we're really, and are we still looking at possibly first quarter next year from what you hear?
I think that's a fair bet that around the Christmas time we may have. It depends upon the potency of the vaccine. If the vaccine is really potent and it's able to eliminate 80-90% of the infections, that will shrink the timeline. If it is 50-60% effective, it will push the timeline further down. But I think first quarter for sure. I would expect 2 or 3 good vaccines by the first quarter, and then the downstream logistics. How do we stagger which population first, which population next? And the other thing about the Moderna and the Novavax viruses, the vaccines, is that because they're genome-based, the vaccines, they are to be stored at minus 70 degrees Fahrenheit. The problem is we don't have that many refrigerators.
Right.
And the supply is restricted, isn't there. So that's going to be another restrictive component in the dissemination of the vaccine, is where do we store it. On the other hand, the vaccine that's being made by Johnson & Johnson, and today I just read a few minutes ago that there was a news release that in the phase 1 and phase 2 study, they had a very substantial antibody or immune response. The good thing about J&J virus or Johnson & Johnson virus vaccine is that it's based on the standard existing techniques, and it doesn't require those extreme cold storage facilities that are required for Moderna and the Novavax.
Okay, so both Moderna and the other one require that kind of refrigeration, which you're going to run into problems on. What you're saying is you're going to run into problems in distribution because it has to be held at a certain temperature to be effective. So we'll see. Dr. Bauman, we're talking to Dr. Bridge Bomby at Bakersfield Heart Hospital on the coronavirus. Every time it seems like, tell me if you share my frustration, when I hear, well, Europe is on the road to recovery, or this country's on the road to recovery, and they're down to a trickle of cases, and damn, it's just like the sun up. You wait a couple months, and they're coming back. I've heard that in Spain. I've heard that in parts of Europe. I mean, what is happening there? And when I look at these European cases, it doesn't give me a lot of hope when I see a pause or the numbers go down here, because I'm thinking, well, every time Europe tries to reopen, then this thing comes roaring back. What's happening there?
It's a broken record. The virus is there, vulnerability is there. They will keep intersecting and infecting. That's no news. That's a predictable behavior, because people get tired, they become rebellious, they want to live their life, And, virus loves that. When you opened up Europe in late summer, it was a give me. It was a give me for the virus. It was supposed to happen. So it's a very predictable behavior. And then, we overshoot on one side, and then the overshoot on the, I don't think we overshoot on the preventative side, but we overshoot on the laxity side. When there is a lack of adherence to the safety measures, virus is going to explode. So, for instance, in Israel, they're thinking of a lockdown at a national level. In Spain, as you mentioned, there are lockdowns. In Madrid, 1 out of 4 patients in the hospitals is a COVID patient.
Oh my God!
That's a huge number. And we keep saying that the summer vacation and long weekends, only young people are interacting. Yes, to begin with, but then there's a ripple effect. They go back to their families. They go back meet their parents and grandparents. The segmentation is porous, and the infection will travel to the more vulnerable with the more severe consequences. And we can't be incognizant of that, and we keep reinforcing that message.
And isn't that the issue with when people say just open up society and protect the vulnerable? Well, to do that, you would have no contact between the younger generation, the younger people who may be asymptomatic, and because you'd have absolutely no contact with them with their parents or their grandparents, right?
Exactly right. And Richard, it doesn't work that way, though. If you look at Houston, in Houston, the infection started in the rich, wealthy area. But where did it kill most? In the poor sections. And the reason is the people from poor sections come and clean your houses, they do your gardens, they get infected, and then they go in multi-generational homes. So the infection there has an open season. It's just the way it is. And the way the nursing home people are being catered are by poor people who are working at minimum wages, and they're in between jobs. They go from place 1 to place 2, and you can't segment the elderly. If they're in a nursing home, they have to have help, and the help is helpless in the face of infection.
Yeah, absolutely. And didn't you tell me, that is COVID now? Where does COVID rank in terms of cause of death in America right now?
So COVID is right now number 3 after cardiovascular deaths, cancer, and then this COVID. But also one has to qualify that statement that COVID deaths are not. It's not a good audit. The general impression among the epidemiologists is we are underestimating, not overestimating the numbers.
Underestimating, not overestimating. Could even be worse than that. Wow. Okay. Well, that's a sad note to end it all. But Dr. Bridgebami, thank you again, sir. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and we always appreciate you coming on for this segment. Very educational.
Thank you. Appreciate it, and you have a safe weekend.
Okay, you too, my friend. Thank you.